I informed my son that I was not his birth mother, and it brought me to my knees. The day I encountered Marco remains etched in my mind. I had just completed the setup of my bakery. Life hadn't quite unfolded as I had envisioned. I had envisioned a lively home brimming with the sounds of children's laughter and the delightful chaos of family dinners. But destiny had different ideas. After years of heartbreak and Luca's abrupt departure when my infertility became too much for him to handle, I chose to direct my energy into crafting something new. A space for gathering, a haven for connection, even if it wasn't within my own walls. That was the moment I discovered Marco. At just 8 years old, he held a sketchbook with such intensity that it seemed on the verge of disintegrating in his tiny hands. His dark, expressive eyes flickered anxiously around the room at the orphanage as I stepped inside, striving to keep my emotions in check. I had completed every form, aced every interview, and assured myself I was prepared. Yet, nothing could have equipped me for the instant I laid eyes on him. A shy boy whose sole defense against the world appeared to be the creativity he bore with him. "Hello, Marco," I said softly, kneeling to his level. "Hi, I'm Rosa. Would you care to join me?" He paused, glancing up at the orphanage director, who offered an encouraging nod. He gradually extended a sketchbook towards me, a gesture that seemed to carry the weight of a challenge. As I turned the pages, I encountered charcoal sketches depicting a sea, the town square, and a pair of hands, each a child's view of life's complexities. I fought back tears with every ounce of strength I had. Instead, I smiled and remarked, "These are truly beautiful. I believe we'll connect quite well." From that day forward, we crafted a life together. Mornings started with me rolling out dough while Marco sketched in his notebook at the counter, his small feet swinging off the high stool. Afternoons unfolded with the charm of discovery, Marco highlighting the ideal perspectives for his landscapes as I observed him thrive. We were more than just a family, we were a cohesive unit. As the years went by, Marco flourished. By the time he turned 21, he had emerged as a skilled painter, his creations encapsulating the spirit of our town in a manner that rendered onlookers utterly speechless. Visitors acquired his creations to bring home fragments of the ocean, the twilight skies, and the delightful streets that had captured their hearts. I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Yet it was accompanied by a deep instinct to protect. Marco was more than just my son. He was the center of my universe, yet there existed a facet of myself that remained hidden from him. I had always informed Marco that his mother had left him at the orphanage due to her inability to care for him. I hadn't revealed the specifics, that she had been a teenager, frightened and inundated, departing with a message and nothing else. I kept those truths locked away, concealed in a small box in the storage room above the bakery, alongside the adoption papers and a handful of letters from his birth mother that she had sent, yet never pursued further. I persuaded myself it was for the greater good. Marco was better off not knowing. We were intertwined, each holding the other, that was sufficient, or so I believed. One evening, while I was sifting through the storage room, the sudden sound of footsteps caught me off guard. Marco stood in the doorway, his tall frame outlined by the warm glow of the bakery below. "What brings you up here?" he inquired. His demeanor relaxed yet his stare piercing. I was merely sorting through some old items, hastily attempting to conceal the open box from sight. He refrained from pressing further, yet his gaze remained fixed on the documents strewn across the floor. I was aware he possessed. He observed something, yet remained silent. He gave a slight nod and departed, his footsteps gradually disappearing down the stairs. The upcoming days carried a distinct feeling. Marco's typical lively spirit was subdued by a calm fervor. He lingered at the bakery, assisting with tasks he once shunned. When I brought it up, he merely shrugged and replied, "I enjoy being here with you." His words enveloped me in warmth, yet a lingering unease settled within me. There was an unexpressed connection between us, a tension I couldn't rather serene location. One afternoon, Marco presented me with a delightful surprise. He created a collection of floral designs for the Bakery windows, vibrant and alive, as if they had been plucked from a garden and set in glass. "For you," he said, his voice gentle yet resolute. "To enhance the beauty of this place even further." I expressed my gratitude, moved by the kind gesture, yet a question lingered in the recesses of my thoughts. Was there a change in him connected to what he had observed in the storage room? Did he have an inkling that there was more to his story than what I had shared with him? I set the thought aside, persuading myself it was merely a figment of my imagination. For the first time since we became a family, I sensed the burden of the secrets I had concealed, poised to emerge. It began quietly. Marco started to inquire about the past, posing questions he had never considered previously. One afternoon, as he assisted me with the cleanup, he inquired, "Did you always want to live here? Or was there something that compelled you to remain?" I paused, taken by surprise. "It seems I've always had a bond with this town," I remarked. "The place of my upbringing, the home of my family. It simply felt appropriate." He nodded with contemplation, his eyes fixed on me as though he anticipated further words. I swiftly shifted the conversation, inquiring about his most recent artwork. He responded with great enthusiasm. Yet his previous question lingered in my mind long after our conversation had concluded. That evening, as we sat on the terrace overlooking the sea, Marco mentioned it once more. "You never mention your family," he remarked. "What is the reason for that?" The reality was intricate. Years had slipped by since my parents passed, and my siblings were dispersed. Our connections frayed by the passage of time, and the miles between us. However, I understood that this wasn't truly what Marco was inquiring about. "I've always concentrated on the family I've selected," I stated thoughtfully. Upon seeing you, his expression softened, but I could observe the gears shifting in his thoughts. He mentioned that he's been reflecting on family as well. Regarding my origins. My heart raced with sudden intensity. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor. "I have been contemplating my biological parents, not because I don't appreciate everything you've done for me," he added quickly, "but because it feels like a part of me I don't understand." I managed to smile, though my chest felt constricted. "That's completely understandable," I remarked. "Everyone is curious about their origins. Are you familiar with them?" He inquired, his voice playful yet his gaze earnest. I averted my gaze, feigning interest in the undulating waves. "Not a lot," I deceived. Exactly what the orphanage informed me. Marco chose not to delve deeper. Yet, the stillness enveloping us was thick, brimming with all that remained unspoken. The following morning, Marco astonished me with yet another present. This time, it was a depiction of the bakery. It beautifully portrayed its joyful exterior, with sunlight pouring through the windows as though the structure itself were brimming with life. He spoke gently, expressing his desire to reveal it as he perceives it. I gazed at the painting, feeling my throat tighten. "It was beautiful," I remarked. "Thanks a lot." However, as time went on, I started to observe a shift in his work. His landscapes became increasingly shadowy, more conceptual. The bright blues and golds of the sea and sky faded into soft hues and sharp outlines. One evening, I discovered him in his studio, gazing at a half-finished painting of a woman. Her face was cloaked in shadows, her expression a mystery. "Who is she?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light. Marco paused, his brush suspended above the canvas. "I'm not certain," he finally admitted. "She simply approached me." His words sent a shiver down my spine. Was he assembling shards of reality? Or was this merely a manifestation of his own internal conflict? One evening, as I finished closing the bakery for the night, I discovered Marco waiting for me outside. "Could we have a conversation?" he inquired, his tone grave. We strolled to the terrace, the moonlight gently illuminating the sea with soft streaks. Marco appeared anxious, his hands buried deep in his pockets. At last, he faced me. "I believe you're concealing something," he murmured softly. My breath was momentarily suspended. "Marco. It's fine," he replied swiftly. I'm not upset. I simply wish to comprehend. If there's something you've held back from me, I can take it. However, I must uncover the truth. I gazed at him, his features bathed in the gentle light of the moon. He had a right to be informed. But how could I convey this without breaking the connection we had forged? Marco, I started, my voice quivering. I have a secret to share with you, reflecting on your history. His demeanor stayed composed, yet, the gravity of the moment bore down on me like a tempest. I could no longer evade. In those days, the bakery transformed into a serene refuge for us. A space where the burden of hidden realities felt less heavy amidst the buzz of life. The comforting aroma of freshly baked bread and the gentle warmth of the ovens created a soothing cadence to our daily lives, yet beneath it all, an undeniable tension remained palpable. Marco had transformed. He lingered at the bakery, his movements purposeful, his gaze frequently wandering, as though he were on a quest for answers that eluded everyone but him. He started inquiring with a delicate touch. Inquiries regarding history. They were not straightforward, yet they bore a heaviness that bore down on my meticulously protected secret. I could sense it in the way he observed me, poised for something to unfold, maybe a beginning, a signal, or simply the bravery to seek the answers he genuinely desired. Every time I redirected, steering the dialogue towards his artwork or the bakery, yet the silent words lingered between us, an unseen thread, stretched tight, and wearing thin with the passage of time. One evening, as the sea breeze wafted gently through the terrace as I finally revealed the truth to him. There was no climactic scene, no intense showdown. It was just time. The truth emerged in hesitant, deliberate phrases regarding his beginnings, his youthful mother, and the decisions she had to confront. I recounted the moment I discovered him, a reserved boy holding a tattered sketchbook, and how I decided to embrace him as my own. Marco listened intently, his demeanor serene yet illegible. Upon completion, I felt no anger, no bitterness, just a serene understanding. Yet something in his gaze had transformed, revealing a depth and intensity that disturbed me in ways I couldn't fully express. In the days that followed, his focus deepened. He lingered at the bakery, tidying up after patrons and playing with fresh ideas for the window displays. He crafted more, his creations evolving into something deeper, more evocative. One morning, I discovered a delicate watercolor of a rose resting on the counter, paired with a freshly brewed cup of tea. The gesture enveloped me in warmth. Yet its precision and thoughtfulness stirred a sense of disquiet within me. The bakery transformed into a vibrant setting, a space where dialogue was minimal yet the actions resonated profoundly. Marco's presence enveloped the room, his subtle energy anchoring me while simultaneously stirring a sense of unease within. One evening, he gifted me a portrait he had created. It was depicted in striking clarity, each contour and shade meticulously portrayed. It wasn't merely a resemblance, it was a reflection of something profound, something I wasn't prepared to confront. The portrait disturbed me, not due to its beauty, but because of the message it appeared to convey. It felt as though he had seen through every barrier I had constructed and seized the true essence of my being. His gaze, as he handed it to me, bore a weight and depth of feeling that made my chest tighten. With each passing day, his gestures grew more intimate. He presented me with small tokens, adorned with elaborate patterns for the bakery, and stayed during the hushed interludes, his presence both comforting and stabilizing, yet imbued with an unarticulated tension. His paintings evolved, the once vibrant landscapes of the town transforming into darker, more intimate works. Every piece seemed like a shard of a narrative he was attempting to convey, one he wasn't prepared to articulate. One evening, as we finished up at the bakery, his hand lightly grazed mine. It was a brief contact, yet it remained in my thoughts long after. His gestures were always kind and deliberate. Yet now there was a tenderness in them that softened the boundaries between family and something deeper. I found myself withdrawing into my reflections, pondering every glance, every gesture, every silent moment we experienced together. The burden of it all became increasingly oppressive as time passed. Marco's attentiveness, his quiet intensity, and his unwavering presence emerged as both a source of comfort and a wellspring of confusion. The boundary separating us was in flux, and I was at a loss for how to keep it stable. My affection for him was intense and unmistakable, yet it was a love I had always perceived as caring and maternal. Now it seemed as if it was transforming into something much more intricate. And I found myself uncertain about how to maneuver through it. The days at the bakery unfolded in their usual rhythm, yet an undercurrent of change lingered just out of sight. The familiar rhythms of our lives now bore an undercurrent of something delicate and ambiguous. The strain of what had been versus what might unfold pressed down on me. And I found myself pondering how long we could uphold this fragile equilibrium before all we had constructed came tumbling down. It began quietly, a fleeting look, the gentle touch of a hand. The way our dialogues meandered into more profound, intimate realms. Marco's presence enveloped every aspect of my existence, and while I had always embraced it, now it felt transformed. Nearly suffocating. He devoted even more hours to the bakery, his concentration steadfast. His hands, adept with a paintbrush, now appeared equally comfortable kneading dough or crafting delicate pastries. Each gesture held a silent closeness, and despite my efforts to dismiss it, I sensed the lines between us altering, blurring in ways that brought me both solace and turmoil. It was during one of those tranquil evenings, as the bakery embraced stillness after closing, that all things reached a climax. The day stretched on, the typical flurry of patrons yielding to an unexpectedly tranquil evening. Marco and I collaborated closely, our actions harmonizing in a silent cadence forged by countless shared experiences over the years. As I wiped down the counters, I turned to find him observing me. His gaze held firm. Yet there was a gentle warmth in it, a fragility that caused my breath to catch. For a brief instant, silence enveloped us both. The quiet lingered, heavy with the unspoken words between us. I could sense my heartbeat accelerate, an unusual warmth enveloping me. Marco moved nearer, the distance between us diminishing to mere inches. His movements were measured and intentional, as if he were offering me every opportunity to retreat. However, I did not. I was unable to. The space felt constricted, the universe collapsing to encompass only him and I. As his hand grazed mine, it felt like time itself had come to a halt. The touch was gentle, nearly tentative, yet it ignited a spark within me that I couldn't overlook. My heart raced, my thoughts a whirlwind of unnamed emotions. Before I could pull away or convince myself to step closer, he leaned in, his lips grazing against mine with a softness that made my heart ache. The kiss lingered only for an instant, a transient encounter that seemed both unattainable and destined. It was neither demanding nor rushed. It was gentle, probing, as though he sought consent for comprehension. In that moment, I found myself unable to intervene. As he withdrew, his gaze locked onto mine, brimming with an intensity that sent a flutter through my stomach. It wasn't remorse or shame, it was optimism, but for what purpose? I couldn't allow myself to think about it. I took a step back, crafting a distance between us, the truth of what had just unfolded collapsing around me. The stillness enveloped us, heavy and unyielding, yet neither of us dared to shatter it. Thoughts surged through my mind, each one clamoring for expression, yet none felt quite fitting. The kiss stirred something within me, a truth I had concealed so profoundly that it had woven itself into the very fabric of my being. Marco remained passive and did not inquire. He observed me quietly, his face a mask of inscrutability yet filled with a sense of calm anticipation. It felt as if he understood my need for time, that the burden of what had just transpired between us was too heavy to bear in that instant. That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself unable to stop replaying the scene in my mind. The sensation of his lips, the heat of his touch, the way he gazed at me as if I were the focal point of his universe. It was a thrilling yet daunting experience. A blend of feelings I had never anticipated, particularly not in relation to him. The boundaries that once defined us had faded in ways I couldn't ignore, and while the future remained uncertain, there was one truth I held firmly in my heart. Nothing between us would ever remain unchanged. The days that followed became a haze of doubt and unexpressed longings. I immersed myself in the tasks at the bakery, seeking solace in the comforting rhythms of the work, hoping they would anchor me and provide support. Understand the events that unfolded, yet. Marco's presence loomed large, particularly as each moment we shared was imbued with the significance of that kiss. One evening, as I was wrapping things up, Marco stood in the doorway. He wore an outfit that stood out from his typical attire, featuring a sharp white shirt, dark trousers, and his hair meticulously arranged. "I want to take you somewhere," he murmured gently, kindly. I ought to have declined, should have upheld the boundaries that were already weakening between us. Instead, I found myself softly saying, "Let me be the one to change first." He led me to a seaside restaurant, one I had walked by countless times yet never stepped inside. Within the space, candles danced softly on each table, creating a gentle glow that played across the pristine white tablecloths. The maitre d' guided us to a hidden nook where we could gaze upon the shimmering waves illuminated by the moonlight. Marco extracted my chair, his fingers lightly grazing my shoulder while I sat. The touch, though fleeting, ignited a spark within me. We ordered wine, and as the night unfolded, as I moved forward, I sensed the barriers I had constructed starting to fracture. "I understand this is complicated," Marco said. His voice was low and intense, yet I can no longer maintain the facade. "The emotions I have for you are genuine. It feels more authentic than anything I've ever experienced." I gazed into a wineglass sits nearby, as I observed the flickering candlelight play upon the surface. "Marco, I am your mother. No," he interjected softly, "you are the one who rescued me, who provided a place that nurtured me, showing me the true essence of love. However, what I feel for you at this moment is unlike anything I've experienced before. It is greater." Before I could reply, he extended his hand across the table and grasped mine. His thumb traced circles on my palm, and I sensed my determination beginning to falter. When I finally looked up, the intensity in his eyes left me utterly breathless. "Dance with me," he whispered, nodding toward the intimate space where a handful of couples gently moved to the soothing melodies. I realized I ought to say no, yet here I was, allowing him to guide me toward the dance floor. His hand rested on my waist, pulling me nearer, the aroma of him, a blend of paint and sea breeze, along with something distinctly Marco, enveloped me. We progressed at a leisurely pace, our forms discovering a harmonious flow. "Look at me," he murmured, and I did. I in the flickering candlelight. His features appeared gentler, yet paradoxically more pronounced. His free hand rose to cradle my cheek, and I leaned into the warmth before I could catch myself. When his lips met mine this time, it was neither gentle nor questioning like before. It was fervent, unwavering, brimming with years of unexpressed desire. I kissed him back with equal intensity, my fingers weaving through his hair, my body drawing nearer. The world around us blurred, the other diners, the music, the crashing waves outside, until there was nothing left but this, just us. As we finally separated, both gasping for air, I noticed the same blend of longing and hesitation reflected in his gaze that echoed the turmoil within my own heart. We had traversed a boundary that could never be undone, unlatched a portal that could never genuinely be sealed. "What are we up to?" I murmured, my forehead pressed softly against his. He responded with simplicity, "Following our hearts." For a moment, simply allowing ourselves to experience our emotions. The remainder of the evening unfolded in a blur of secret caresses and smoldering looks. As we stepped out of the restaurant, strolling hand in hand along the moonlit beach, I felt an undeniable shift in everything around us. The bond we had forged through years of shared experiences and serene moments had evolved into something entirely different, something that was both exquisite and perilous, gentle yet intense. As we arrived at the bakery, Marco drew me in once again. "I adore you," he whispered against my lips, not in the way a son cherishes his mother, but as a man adores a woman who cradles his whole universe in her grasp. I ought to have intervened, ought to have recalled the essence of our connection. the roles we were meant to play in each other's lives. Instead, I yielded to the reality we had both been resisting for so long. I love you too, I whispered back, sealing the words with another kiss that tasted of wine and destiny in the sweet, forbidden fruit of desires finally fulfilled. The annual town festival came alive with its vibrant display of color and enchanting melodies. The streets buzzed with the presence of familiar faces, neighbors, regular customers, and relatives who had journeyed from nearby towns. My sister Elena arrived with her family, bringing that unique form of scrutiny that only siblings can provide. The bakery, as always, stood at the center of the celebration. After days of meticulous preparation, I crafted special pastries, while Marco transformed our windows with a breathtaking mural, depicting a sweeping scene of golden wheat fields merging with the sea. However, it wasn't his artwork that captured attention that evening. We stood behind the counter together, attending to customers as we had done innumerable times in the past. Yet, there was a change in the way we navigated our space together, a choreography too close to conceal. Elena observed intently, her gaze sharpening as she saw Marco's hand lightly graze mine while he offered a tray of bread. Rosa, she called from across the room, her voice resonating with that unmistakable hint of worry. May we have a conversation? Before I could respond, Marco moved in closer, his presence firm and unwavering. The bakery had become more subdued, the sounds of the festival's music wafting in through the open doors. In that moment, gazing at my sister's anxious expression and sensing Marco's comforting presence beside me, I realized it was time. Actually, Marco said, his voice unwavering and precise, there's something we need to share with everyone. The atmosphere quieted, as familiar faces, loyal patrons, companions, and relatives focused their attention on us. Marco's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining openly for the first time in public. My heart raced in my chest, yet I remained steadfast. Rosa and I, he continued, gazing at me with an intensity that took my breath away, discovered something exquisite together, something genuine. He grasped my hand tightly. I understand this may be difficult to grasp, but our love transcends the typical boundaries. We are not just mother and son, but two individuals who have created a life together, and wish to continue that journey. Elena gasped, while others murmured in surprise, but Marco had more to say. He turned to face me completely, taking both of my hands in his. I don't care what anyone thinks, he said softly, though his voice resonated in the stillness of the room. You are my sanctuary, my soul, my all. And I wish for the world to see it. Then he kissed me, right there in our bakery, enveloped by the life we had created, and the familiar faces around us. It wasn't a fervent kiss like at the restaurant, nor a curious one like our first. It was soft, reassuring, and almost boldly affectionate. As we said our goodbyes, the stillness was overwhelming. From the back of the room, old Mrs. Bellini, who had purchased our bread daily for 13 years, began to clap. Others participated, initially with some reluctance, but gradually with increasing confidence. Certainly not everyone. Elena remained motionless, her husband gently leading her to a chair. Some customers slipped out quietly, but as Marco held me close, his heartbeat steady against mine, I understood it didn't matter. We had concealed our feelings for an eternity, attempting to confine our love within boundaries it was never intended to inhabit. In the gentle glow of our bakery, enveloped by the aroma of freshly baked bread and the lively sounds of the festival beyond, we found our long-awaited freedom. I love you, I murmured softly against his chest, just loud enough for anyone nearby to catch the words. I love you too, he replied, his voice imbued with the same unwavering certainty it had held since that very first kiss. The festival persisted beyond our doors, vibrant life swirling around our quaint bakery like the tide caressing a steadfast stone. Changes were inevitable, they had already begun.